It is the agenda for the 21st century you're living in today. For a brave new world where everything that you cherished and held true will no longer exist.
A day after Venezuelans flooded the streets to protest their government, President Nicolas Maduro has announced a 40% increase in minimum wage and a 20% wage hike for public servants, including the armed forces. It's the fourth wage hike this year and no doubt will temper some of the anger and frustration that sparked the massive demonstrations on Wednesday, and images like this one, a man shouting at riot police, "Go ahead and shoot me, I'm just hungry."
Security forces are lining the streets of Caracas, gearing up for the possibility of more unrest in Venezuela. Tensions have reached a boiling point since the government blocked a recall referendum to oust President Nicolas Maduro from office. On Wednesday, tens of thousands of demonstrators clashed with police in a number of cities. A police officer was killed. Hundreds of protesters were arrested.
The jungle camp has been cleared of refugees, but if you take a ride on the metro in Paris, you can see what's rising in its place. The tents around Stalingrad Square in the northeast of the capital are spreading so rapidly the camp now has three separate suburbs: Sudanese, Eritrean and Afghan.
Police in the US state of North Dakota begin clearing a group of Native American and environmental protesters from an encampment near an oil pipeline construction site. There are concerns it could escalate tensions in a standoff that's lasted several months. The pipeline will take shale oil from North Dakota to oil refineries on the US Gulf Coast. Pepper spray has been used. There are reports at least 141 people have been arrested. Supporters say the pipeline would be safer and more cost-effective than transporting the oil by road or rail. However, the Standing Rock Sioux tribe say it threatens the water supply and sacred tribal sites.
Oh, we're there waiting for us there.
We got somebody else.
My home, my cars, everything, my son, so I can be here, so I can stand up. I've been living in a sleeping bag of tent for 3 months, waiting for this day.
Britain's Queen has unveiled a bronze statue of her mother. It sits in the English town of Poundbury in the county of Dorset, which Prince Charles has helped to develop.
2016 has been a record-breaking year for cocaine seizures, the US Coast Guard has said. More than 200 tons of the drug were intercepted, including over £5,500 in one haul. Officials said nearly 600 suspected drug traffickers were also detained.
6 months into a deepening drought across much of the South, the weather is killing crops, threatening cattle, and sinking lakes to their lowest level in years. The very worst conditions are in the mountains of northeast Alabama and northwest Georgia. Forecasters call the conditions in the region exceptional drought. The area is known for its thick green forests, waterfalls, and red clay soil. David Bailey had to sell half his cattle, more than 100 animals, for lack of hay in Alabama's scorched northeast corner. He says the last rain came on April 15th. Bailey added, "There's a bunch of people in a lot of bad shape here. The drought has spread from these mountains into the Piedmont Plateau, down to the plains and across 13 southern states, from Oklahoma and Texas to Florida and Virginia. According to Thursday's U.S. Drought Monitor, about 33 million people are in drought conditions.
More than 2/3 of the world's wildlife could be gone by the end of the decade if action isn't taken soon. Researchers say human activity is reducing the numbers of elephants in Tanzania. The numbers of Asian lions and Sumatran tigers have also dwindled.
We looked at what would happen if nothing changes, if we continue as we are up until 2020, and we find that the decline could be up to 67% if nothing changes in those wildlife population trends.
One of the actions pushing the decline is the growing number of humans.
Well, the other thing that the report is very clear on is that we know the causes of this environmental decline. It are things like pollution, it's about overconsumption, it's about habitat destruction, it's about overuse of water, overfishing, and all of that is compounded by the effects of climate change.
According to the WWF, since 1970, there has already been a 58% overall decline in the numbers of fish, mammals, birds and reptiles worldwide. That means wildlife across the globe is vanishing at a rate of 2% a year.
This is a cause of concern. This statistic is quite alarming, but it's important to know that these are not species being lost or even populations being lost. These are declines that can still be reversed. So we do have a chance, if we put the right things in place, that we can actually make a difference and start reversing this trend.
The Living Planet report analyzed data for 3,706 species in what was described as the most comprehensive study of the state of wildlife globally.
Inside this unassuming piece of rock is the first known example of fossilized brain tissue from a dinosaur. Using a scanning electron microscope to peer inside, scientists identified the intricate structures of brain tissue.
This amazing specimen has preserved not only the texture and structure of what are called the meninges, these very tough membranes that surround the actual soft parts of the brain, but the mineralization has also preserved the fine blood vessels running through those textures, and also the really fine capillaries and a little bit of the cortex of the brain immediately beneath those membranes.
The fossil was found in 2004 on a beach in Sussex, southern England. It's most likely from a species similar to the iguanodon, a large herbivorous dinosaur that lived around 133 million years ago. It's exceptionally rare for soft tissue to be so well preserved that it can be studied. Researchers believe the dinosaur must have died in a bog or swamp, with just the right conditions needed for preservation.
So as the animal died, it must have its head must have tipped over into a stagnant pond. In these stagnant conditions, the sort of acidic nature of the water means that the membranes of the brain itself started to pickle, started to harden. And once you've got the hardening of what are otherwise extremely soft tissues, you begin the process of preservation.
Paleontologists say the structure of the brain tissue is similar to that of the modern-day descendants of dinosaurs, such as birds and crocodiles. The research is published in a special publication of the Geological Society of London.
Hillary Clinton wants to raise taxes on small businesses up to 45%. What a difference. You know, what a difference this is. And just thinking to myself right now, we should just cancel the election and just give it to Trump, right? What are we even having it for? What are we having it for?
Hostile world. They've gathered here on a rooftop overlooking the walls of Jerusalem's old city to support Donald Trump. Americans in Israel brought together by a group called Republicans Overseas Israel. And the feeling is apparently mutual.
All Americans.
Trump says he supports them.
Together, we will stand up to the enemies like Iran, bent on destroying Israel and her people.
Trump's campaign has said the nominee will never pressure Israel into a two-state solution with the Palestinians.
Into a two-state solution or any other solution.
And these supporters say his stance on security make him the best candidate.
A brand new email revealed Team Hillary trying to use the chokehold death of Eric Garner here in New York for political gains.
Eric Garner's daughter is now ripping into the Clinton campaign, or the camp, I should say, publicly expressing her outrage.
Politicians across Europe and no doubt across the Atlantic in Canada will probably sleep a lot better tonight. Earlier on Thursday, the EU-Canada Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, or CETA, had life breathed back into it. Now, Charles Michel, the Belgian Prime Minister, confirmed that the Walloons are now on board. They managed to smooth over concerns on agricultural imports and the contentious dispute mechanism under CETA. But some protesters did gather outside the EU executive, the European Commission, to show their disgust and called out the Wallonian Minister President Paul Magnette, saying that he had let them down.
Federal law enforcement officials are becoming increasingly concerned about the risk of violence as Election Day nears. We're told threats have been made on social media and in other forums, raising alarms that some of them could become a reality, not only on Election Day, but before and after.
Well, thousands of illegal immigrants are now pouring into this country, speaking of the election, hoping that they will be able to stay if Hillary Clinton wins the White House. Fox News contributor Pete Hegseth is here to weigh in on this. Thank you once again for joining us this morning.
Yeah.
So this is turning into a real problem.
Of course. Elections have consequences. Policies matter. And in this particular case, they understand that Donald Trump has said, and smugglers are telling officials that illegals feel like a wall's going to pop up and they're not going to be able to cross. So you've got 11 days now between the election, a couple of months before inauguration. If it's a Donald Trump presidency, you better get in now and get in quickly.
Clinton, you can stay. Trump, you have to go.
Clinton, the speeches we got from WikiLeaks, wants this open border policy. She's very pro-amnesty. Her immigration plan that she's planning to introduce would include a path to legalization for anyone here. They understand that. So get in while the getting's good now, just in case. And then because if it's Donald Trump, the gravy train's going to stop.
The United Nations voted Thursday to start talks on a treaty that would ban nuclear weapons. 123 nations said they were in favor of the resolution, an overwhelming majority. Now the measure will go to a full General Assembly vote in December. The goal is to set up a conference in March to negotiate a legally binding instrument to prohibit nuclear weapons, leading towards their total elimination. Support for the treaty has been gaining steam during the past few months of negotiations, but the 9 known nuclear-armed nations, including the US, UK, and Russia, still have no interest. The Obama administration has firmly expressed its opposition to the resolution, citing security concerns. But the US does support the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which would stop countries from becoming nuclear and limit the creation of new weapons instead of banning them entirely.
The finalisation of NATO's plans at a summit this week to send troops to the Baltic states and eastern Poland has been greeted frostily in Russia. The Western military alliance intends to send an initial contingent around 4,000 strong.
Just a moment.
Foreign policy specialists from East and West have been meeting in Sochi under what's been described as a Cold War shadow in the Russian resort. The Russian president took part in the final session and said,
Постоянно штампуются угрозы вымышленные.
New imaginary threats have been created all the time, like the so-called Russian military threat. It's of course very profitable because people can ask for bigger military budgets in their countries, or allies can be made to bend down in some superpower's interests.
The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, that's a British-based human rights watcher, said either Russia or Syria's warplanes carried out 6 strikes, including the one on the school complex. But Russia has denied any involvement and demanded an immediate investigation.
If there is an agreement, it should be reserved, or in any case, don't blame or accuse us of all mortal sins. This is simply indecent. For now, we act as restraint and don't respond to our partners in such a rude way. But everything has its limits. We may respond.
We believe that the proof is not there for any big punitive action to be taken. It's simply not there.
These are the images the United Nations wants the world to see. Saida Baghili is 18 years old. She should be full of life. Instead, she is slowly dying, starving, with no access to food or medicine in her tiny fishing village south of Hodeidah, after 19 months of relentless airstrikes by a Saudi-led coalition on Yemen's Houthi rebels.
Obama and the State Department are mulling over options on how to punish Russia for its actions in Syria. The U.S. already has sanctions placed on Russia's main arms exporter, placed one on a motorcycle club linked to the division in Crimea, and countless other individuals and Russian companies. There are so many sanctions on Russia that even experts at the Wilson Center joked that there is nobody left to sanction but the janitor at the Kremlin.
The bottom line on nuclear weapons is that when the president gives the order, it must be followed. There's about 4 minutes between the order being given and the people responsible for launching nuclear weapons to do so. As president, I will make it clear that the United States will treat cyber attacks just like any other attack. We will be ready with serious political, economic, and military responses.
They're voting for peace on planet Earth if they vote for Trump. But if they vote for Hillary, it's war.
We came, we saw, he died.
With her, you'll end up in World War III.
I want the Iranians to know that if I'm the president, we will attack Iran.
Right now, Senator, for us to control all of the airspace in Syria would require us to go to war against Syria and Russia.
The U.S. military has just raised the threat level to DEFCON 2. Meanwhile, Hillary Clinton is still threatening Russia with military action following unconfirmed reports of further hacking. It's like she's not even concerned about the repercussions.
Of course not,
guys.
because she's...
Look, there's a really loud noise.
All right, looks like we're having a little bit of technical difficulties. We'll try to get Leanne back on in a few minutes.
When the president gives the order, it must be followed.